Hello, everyone. This is Tommy at World at War Comics, and thanks for joining us again for another amazing podcast. But before we get into this podcast, if you could please give us a like, if you could subscribe, and obviously if you could share the content, that really helps us out and allows us to bring you a lot more amazing interviews. Also, remember, Cien Chilies is our official sponsor of World at War Comics podcast. If you go to cienchilies.com and you place an order on hot sauces, which are the best hot sauces you'll ever have, and you use comics at checkout, you will save 15% off your total order. That's Cien Chilies, cienchiles.com. All right, without further ado, our next guest is Nigel Lynch. He is the writer and creator of Diary of the Stray Dogs and an upcoming new title called Critical Ops Task Force by Wiseacre Comics. So without further ado, here is my interview with Nigel. I think you're going to really like it. He is an amazing writer and creator, and he will not disappoint. Thanks, everyone, and talk soon. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the World at War Comics podcast. My next guest is the one and only Nigel Lynch. Nigel, thank you for joining me, man. Super excited to talk to you. I got well, first you sent me Diary of a Stray Dog, which I was super excited about. And then I found out about a new title that's up and coming. And you gave me a sneak peek of that too, but we'll save that for right now because I want to really get to know you a little bit better and how you got into that passion of comics. But before then, how are you doing? How's things going with you, Nigel?
I'm a little tired. I had a convention this weekend. It's
Nice.
a local convention we have here in Barbados called AnimeCon. And it
Nice.
was like a grueling 2 days on your feet, talking to people and that kind of stuff. So it's in a little bit of a recovery mode right now, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty good otherwise.
That's good. I'm hoping it was successful. You got your titles out to everybody.
Yeah. It was great to kind of interact with people, tell them about future endeavors, what's coming. People were impressed by the books, the print quality, and that kind of stuff.
That's awesome, man. Well, congratulations. Glad you
Thanks
had
so
a
much.
great con. Cons are very important to get in front of people, so that's pretty cool, man. Very good, very good. So let's just jump into it, Nigel. I mean, when did this passion for comic books start in your life? Did it start early on, or is it something a little bit newer for you?
Well, it started very early in my life.
Yeah.
I can actually remember the first comic book I ever read. I would have been around 4 years old.
Oh wow.
It was a Spider-Man. I actually went back and looked up what the number was. It was Spider-Man 222. I can
Nice.
remember it because it was Spider-Man, and it may have been the first appearance of Speed Demon, but it
Mm,
was Spider-Man and Speed Demon. And when I was a child, my parents always tried to encourage me to read, but
yeah.
being back in that time, they didn't see comics as reading.
Yeah.
So it was almost like comics was like a toy, but
Yeah.
this was before we had like video games and we had cell phones and stuff. So you had more, everybody was into comic books. You
Yeah.
didn't go by anybody's house and it didn't have a comic book on the coffee table or the, so I was always into comic books. But I'm from Barbados, so the difference was if I read a comic book today, I may not get to read what the second part was until maybe months later. I may
Yeah.
read the next the one that was before it, but you kind of held all these things in your mind and you kind of piece together the story. So I always love comic books. I love art. I love drawing, and it always had a special place for me. So
Mhm.
if you fast forward now, I also have family from the UK. So I don't
Mhm.
know if you're familiar with UK now. Back in the 80s, Marvel from the US and Marvel from the UK were two separate entities.
Mhm.
So when I was a little older, my family sent me their older comic books, and their comic books were done in a way where they would compile three stories from older issues of Marvel, which would be Iron Man, Spider Man, and Thor.
Mhm.
They wouldn't have any colors, and it would be slightly bigger. It would be like almost like a oversized issue,
Mhm.
like a
Yeah.
magazine. So I got them, and that kind of filled me in with the backstory of a lot of stuff because it was a lot of older stories. And again, this is before you had the internet and you could research stuff. So these things
Yeah.
kind of help fill me in with the lore. And we as a people and friends would talk about comic books. We would talk about what we read. Somebody would sit down and tell you about a comic book with such great detail. You
Yeah.
felt as though you read it yourself. You know what I mean? And
That's
so
cool.
so going up, but somewhere along the lines in my teens, although I was very much into art and I dabbled with trying to do those scribbles and stuff, comic books, I stepped away from it.
Oh.
So I stepped away from it. You had other things come into my life, uh, video games, different things.
Hmm.
But I came back around the time of Civil War and the
Yeah.
Ultimates was around.
Yeah.
And I remember going into a comic shop and somebody trying to explain to me what the Ultimate Universe was. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Because I left with one universe, one, and this guy's telling me, no, 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 this is the, and it's, but then, and then by that time, the movies was coming in and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But I always had a dream to create a comic book.
Yeah.
And I kind of gave up on it in terms of me drawing it.
Hmm.
And I never saw myself as a writer because I
Yeah.
always thought as writing was something where it was more pen to paper, grammar, that kind of stuff. But I
Yeah.
was always a storyteller
Mm.
because, again, being a child of the 80s, when you watched a TV show, or you watched a movie that your friends couldn't watch, you had to then turn around and retell it to them with such
Mm.
great detail and that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
then also too, because we didn't have the video games, even video games of our time, you still had to put a certain level of imagination because the graphics wasn't that good.
Yeah.
The game, so you had to kind of embellish it a little bit, So
Sure.
these things kind of, you always had that imagination, that sense
Yeah.
of storytelling. Games was be simple, but you kind of expanded the story in your mind. You watch TV shows and then you play games with your Lego pieces and stuff. You would play these shows you watch. You play Star Wars, you play Star Trek. Even before they had Lego Star Wars, you
Yeah.
used to be playing Lego with stuff like that. So always was into storytelling, and I wasn't really good at writing
Yeah.
or English. And I remember just one day saying I will try to, and I pushed myself and I wrote on a chicken scratch on a book, bad grammar, and I then turned around and gave it to my wife, and she then edited it and typed it up for me, and that's how I started.
Mm.
And in the beginning too, I didn't know anything about writing a comic script.
Yeah.
Uh, I just thought you wrote a short story, you gave it to somebody, and they chopped it up and they did that.
Hmm.
So when I approached the artist, he was like, the one artist that would I kind of knew. He said, "Well, no, you got to kind of write a script." And luckily for me, I kind of found the script online because it
Mm.
wasn't as widespread as it is now. But I found
Yeah.
one, followed that format, and that's where I started. And as throughout the years, I've been able to type for myself, edit for myself,
Hmm.
with the advance of technology moving forward, because spell checks and the different things have kind of all gone. There's text to speak to listen to your story. There's so much things have gone that
Yeah.
you can do things a little more for yourself.
Yeah.
So fast forward, I did wrote my first book in 2007,
Mm.
and from then, so 17 years ago, every year I publish one comic book a year at least.
Wow. Wow. That's
So
amazing.
yeah, so I've probably worked on over 20 titles.
That's incredible. Well, I'm only aware of the two, man. I need to dig in, Nigel.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
These two are
well,
pretty
it's
awesome, man.
it, as I say, it's funny. So as much as when you grow, so as I said, I'm from Barbados, and I would have done a lot of stuff here,
Yeah.
and so I have like audio awards, I have angel awards and different things like that. But then somewhere along the line, when I was introduced to social media, I realized there was a bigger world out there with independent comics,
Yeah.
and it's almost like I have to start over. So these
Mm.
books that I'm doing now, even though I have 17 years of experience and I have over 20 books, it's almost like starting over fresh. This is my book
Yeah.
once again because I'm now in a new environment with new people, new players. I have to
Yeah.
establish myself again. So, but at least with experience, you can build on it so you don't lose what you have when you go
Yeah.
forward.
That's awesome. Well, are either of these two stories a story that you had already published a while ago and then you're reintroducing them, or are these brand new stories that you created recently?
Okay, so funny you should say that. The Diary of the Stray Dogs concept was
Oh,
literally the first book I ever came up with 17 years ago.
oh
Right? That was the
wow.
first book I ever did. But it was never published.
Hmm.
It we did some work on it. It was supposed to be for part of an anthology, and we kind of shelved it.
Hmm.
But what it was just basically a seed because when I went back to it again, the characters are different, the settings are different, but
Yeah.
I just kind of took the name and built off of it. So I would like to pay homage to it, but
Hmm.
it's a little different. So when I started back, my head was in a different place. I had a different set of experience, came off of writing a bunch of different books. So I was kind of happy that I did that now
Yeah.
versus then
Hmm.
because now I could actually produce a better book. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so it's an old concept, but it's really a reboot and it's something
Yeah.
new.
Well, that's pretty cool, though. That's pretty cool. So now I assume, right, that passion for writing is there because you're pretty good at it. When did you? So I know you went in 2007. You started creating comic books. When did you say, "Look, I could do this," and now it became more enjoyable to write? Because you had made a comment earlier that writing wasn't something that you were really interested in, but then obviously something switched because you got really good at it, Nigel.
It's for me, I think it is the joy of creation,
Yeah, yeah,
creating the stuff.
that
So I
makes
always
sense.
tell people, right, the way how comic books and creating a comic book is if you do not enjoy it, if you
Hmm.
don't find it as fun,
Yeah,
it's gonna beat you. It's not, don't do this if you don't enjoy it, if you don't like it.
yeah,
Because it can there's so many things that are around the corner to be a pitfall from, I
yeah,
mean, anything bad that could happen.
yeah,
You could lose files, you could get artist flake on you, you
yeah,
could get deals that fall out. There's
yeah,
so many things that could go wrong that if you don't love it,
yeah,
um, for me, what happened with the writing, and it still is a issue, is you become more and more confident as you go forward.
yeah.
So as I said in the beginning, so I have dyslexia. So basically, I had no interest in school to do with any form of subject that had to do with writing. So I did
Mm.
most subjects with my hands, most
Yeah.
stuff with technical stuff. So I work in architecture, so I draw.
Uh-huh.
Um, but the writing has pushed me to develop that side and embrace the dyslexia too, to know you will make mistakes, you do
Hmm.
have flaws, but
Yeah.
push forward. Um, Also going forward too, you still have things like imposter syndrome. So like
Yeah.
as much as you say, well, this book is great, I love it, you're so very nervous, you're so very,
Yeah.
will this come off? Will they accept it? Will you like it? If you every time if you go like if you have a falling out with like I say, an editor or something, you're kind of like questioning, well, am I right? Did I make the right choice? But at the end of the day, for me, what makes it all worthwhile is when you get a fan that says, I love this work,
Yeah.
fan art, or you get somebody who sits down and discusses the book with you and takes it so seriously or deeply. It kind of that is what you're aiming for. When you get someone to sit down and ask and tell you things about your character that they deem or what they think, that's
Yeah.
when those are the things that push you forward. But
Yeah.
you have to kind of have that confidence to slowly, and it's not easy. It's not
Yeah.
easy because every time you put yourself out there, you're taking a chance.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man. No, I mean, it makes sense, right? And I don't think any of us like to hear news that we created something that wasn't that good. So I get it. I get it. But I mean, luckily for you, at least the first two that I've read have been very good, Nigel. I think you've done it, my friend. I think you've done it. Yeah. Well, let's jump real quick into Diary of the Stray Dogs then, because that was my first read, and it was quite enjoyable, man. I mean, it. I know I messed up her
Shani,
name. What's that?
Shani, Shani,
Shiny.
Shani. Yeah.
Yeah, no, okay, very good. Yeah,
So
I know I screwed that up. I apologize, but man,
no
she
problem. It's
is
no
she
problem.
is amazing, man, in this comic. It's incredible.
Thank you. Thank you. It's funny, like so the Diary of the Stray Dogs book
Uh-huh.
is one of the it has like a almost like a the team behind it is a really international team. So I
Hmm.
have the artist is from Spain, Juan Carlos.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
an amazing artist.
Oh, he's incredible. Yeah.
He's an amazing artist. He is there's a lot of things. Okay, so the way how I met him was on a site called Upwork.
Mm.
Upwork, right? And okay, so everything to do with my venture into comics is turning a failure into a success.
Hmm.
So what had happened was the original Diary of the Stray Dogs, when it came back, we started to do it, but me and the artist got busy and we put it on the shelf and said, well, look, we're going to come back to this in a year.
Hmm.
But we didn't have a chance. So then I did another story. And that artist and I, we're still doing that one, but that
Hmm.
is on hold. So then I said, well, I have so much stories in my head. Let me see if I can find someone who can just do it. So I went out at work and I was just going through tons and tons and tons and tons of artists. And I saw one guy's piece, just one piece.
Hmm.
And I said, this is it.
Yeah.
This spoke to me. So I actually reached out and said, would you be interested in doing it? Went back and forth. He said, sure. I sent him one page of the script. He did the page. Um, I loved it. And he said, well, would the page be in the comic? I said, sure. And we went from there. And
Yeah.
it was a feeling out and building process. And
Yeah.
what I love about Juan Carlos is even if I approve a page and I'm happy with it and he's not, when I come back, he will send me something drawn over. Sometimes it's a case, the changes are so slight that I have to actually cycle through the images to see if I could just pick up that slight animated move to see what has been changed because it's such
Yeah.
a perfectionist.
That's
So on
amazing.
that, yeah, on that book too, I worked with a guy called King Bola from the
Mm.
Philippines. He's an amazing self-taught colorist.
Uh-huh.
And with these guys or with any team, if you get a team that's in tune with the job, you don't have to micromanage.
Yeah.
They kind of see it and they add their own. So it's a joy when you send out a script and when you get that page back and the interpretation isn't what you had in mind,
Mm.
but it's better.
Yeah,
Then you
yeah.
send that out to get colored and the colors that you had in mind, when it comes back and it's better, those
Yeah.
things are, those things are, that's what kind of keeps you going with terms
Yeah.
of the creation.
Yeah.
So yeah, so
Probably feels pretty good too, right? To know that that story is being received and they're kind of understanding where you want to go with that story, because
yeah,
that's really important between an artist, a colorist, and a writer, right? And as a fan of comic books, you could tell when the writer is not on the same page as the artist, and they're almost
yeah,
telling two separate stories. They're kind of related, but they're a little bit different, right? So yeah, no,
yeah,
it's very important.
and there's a thing where I could, as you said, there's certain things I can see it and I look through a book, mostly indie books, and I would say,
Yeah.
see this page here. The artist wanted to do something, the writer wanted to do something. When he got the page back, he just kept his dialogue the same. He didn't edit it.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an instance of if I write a piece of dialogue and I set up a page, but then the artist comes back with a different page. Sometimes it may not just be space because we set up spaces so we know what will happen. But sometimes the mood of what he has changed. So I would
Mm.
change the dialogue to suit the
Yeah.
tone. The person may have a slight smile, or maybe then turn around and change the way how the person speaks because
Yeah.
it all has to kind of match the tone of what the person is saying, if they're joking,
Yeah.
if they're laughing, versus how the person's face is and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And that book was a real learning experience between us as a team working
Yeah.
together. And also too, there's a lot of things too, like give and take. I I try not to frustrate an artist.
Yeah.
So I will let certain things slide.
Yeah.
But then there's other things too where I will point out and say, well, because there's those mistakes or those little things that you can't unsee.
Yeah.
And we've come to that kind of teamwork and that kind of thing. So if I point out and say, well, you see how that is this way, and we're like, yeah, no problem, we have to change that. Because one thing which is interesting is that the eyes on the indie world and the comic book world is like a microscope. So you can't be
Yeah.
perfect. You have to do your best because
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
always something else. On page 7, she had
Yeah.
on a red dress, and on
Yeah.
page 8, she's a blue dress.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I do short runs when I print them. That way I can make the correction
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
next.
yeah, yeah. That's the beauty of it, that you could do a correction and no one will know.
Yeah, no one.
Yeah,
Hopefully, you correct it before people point it out to you. But I've definitely had people say, "Hey, it was good, but you made a mistake here." I'm like, "Damn it! I checked it like 100 times. I had an editor, everything, and it's still snuck by everybody." But yeah,
yeah,
yeah, very frustrating, but part of the process, right? That's how we grow. That's how we
yeah.
grow. All right, man. Let's get into this critical ops task force because this is brand new. I don't think anybody really knows outside of your group that this is a new comic coming out by you, Nigel. And
Yeah,
you're working with a pretty amazing publisher in Wiseacre, who
yeah,
I'm a big fan of, and I have quite a few of their comics. I have almost everything they've produced so far. And then they work with one of my favorite publishers, Godhood Comics, and that's where Frederick got a lot. So I mean, you're tying in with some really elite comic
yeah.
book publishers, my friend, which you should because this Critical Ops was really good, man. High quality for
Thanks,
sure.
thanks. So that's an Italian artist,
Uh
and that's
huh.
like I believe the colorist is also from Italy.
Yeah.
Um, and that's Frank Mazzola,
Yeah.
and he worked on a book with a guy called Chris Moses,
Oh
and
yeah. I know Chris.
right, and he also worked on a book called the name is Book of it's a science fiction book. The name escapes me right now, but
Yeah.
that's
No problem.
where I kind of saw his work,
Mm,
and I so the way how I kind of pick artists is, or how I judge a book. I
yeah.
just don't say well art is good or bad. I kind of judge it on would I use this artist for my a project, and if
Yeah.
I would, I then deem that is great art. And
Hmm.
it's all about picking the right artist for the right project.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes we got to talking. I like to get to know the artist, so I don't just jump in say, well, I got a book. This is it. You could do this for me. We sit down. We talk about what films we like, what
Yeah.
movie, what books, what comic books, personalities. Sometimes down to music. Try to
Hmm.
find something that you can relate to them on a level,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
when you're dealing with international
Yeah.
people from all, because you have to find something that's a common bond that's drawing you all together, right? Because we all come from different cultures, we all
Sure.
come from different time zones and everything. So we kind of talked a bit, and then he said, "Well, yeah, he'd be interested." And I told him, "Well, this is what I want to do." He loved the concept, and the way how we were doing it. Sometimes we would write. I wrote the whole thing, gave it to him, tell him have a look, tell me what you think. He said he loves it. And what he said, like, there was a page there, and he sent back a sketch, and he said, "Well, can we do this like this?" And I said, "Well, will we still get to where we were going?" Yes, and that's how I kind of flow. If
Yeah.
we have to go from point A to point B, if the artist has a better suggestion or a
Yeah.
better way to do it,
Yeah.
once it doesn't change my story,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I remember I've had an editor say, "Well, you didn't write in a I may have written a book, and then there's one page I didn't write the fight scene." And they said, "But you didn't write any fight scene." And I said, "Well, because I think as a writer, I'm stifling the creativity of the artist.
Mm,
If I hamstring him,
yeah.
because he's the person doing it, especially if I trust him,
Yeah. Yeah.
he knows best." And what was interesting, the artist said he sees himself as the director. to my
Yeah.
movie. So he's picking those shots and those angles.
Yeah.
So it's all about trust and finding the team that will work for you and see your vision.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's really important, right? And I also think giving a little bit of that leeway for the artist creates more buy-in from that artist too, right? Because you made an
Yeah.
amazing comment earlier about trust. And
Mm.
if you could give them that ability to kind of come up with the concept on their own, you start to build a lot more of that trust, and that back and forth, I think, becomes a lot easier too and smoother. And I don't know, I think it works out a lot better if you're able to do that, right?
Yeah. And the other thing it also does is open it because there is a page that you envision you want it a certain way. So
Yeah.
what I will do is I still have a slight art background. I will sketch it or I may send a picture reference. And then they will tend to accommodate you for that page, or they will kind
Mm.
of see and they would sometimes they will take your idea and run with it and make it 10 times better. So therefore
Yeah.
you still get what you want, but now if they're spinning it, everybody just feels involved, right?
Yeah, yeah, man. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, we certainly don't want to give anything away. We have the Kickstarter that we're going to talk about here in a minute. So I don't want to give any of the story away on this. But the character development is pretty awesome. Maybe we could talk a little bit about the importance of character development, how you come up with your characters. Because, you got Douglas, and we won't say too much more, who is by far my favorite in this. I mean, he is a badass and he's amazing, and he's objective, but there is a little bit of a heart, but he's still very objective. I mean, a lot of things I dug out of this, man, and I really enjoyed it. So like I said, I don't want to give anything away, but how did you come up with the character development, and how do you know how many characters you need as you're writing the story? Like, how does that all come together for you?
Okay, so I would writing a story like this
Mm-hmm.
for both of them.
Yeah.
It's a bit difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you're juggling a cast of. I think both books have a cast of. Well, the second to the Wounded has a cast of five also.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
let me go with COTF. So
Yeah.
COTF was supposed to be the original Diary of the Stray Dogs book. Douglas
Okay.
was supposed to be the main character,
Mm-hmm.
and as I said, the hookups caused me to create the side character, which I fell in love with, Shani, and started to run
Yeah.
with. Okay, so Douglas's character, I'll tell you what influenced me with COTF was the movies that I like, which is the high octane action
Yeah.
science fiction. One of my favorite science fiction movies is Elysium with
Mm.
Matt Damon. So you
Yeah.
so you get a lot of aesthetic. So it's a different type of futuristic thing. Aside, so also both of them are in the same world. You'll see that one book is cyberpunk, and one's a little bit like dirty,
Yeah.
gritty, grimy kind of thing, right?
For sure.
Another movie, because when we did that book, we literally kind of said we're doing the raid. I don't know if you ever watched the raid. The raid is a is an Asian movie where these cops go up into a building. It's very similar to Judge Dredd, the last Judge Dredd
Oh,
movie.
okay.
Right. It's like that.
Yeah.
Almost
Yeah.
like where you funnel people into a building and it's high octane, high action.
Yeah.
So the trick of the characters is to try to make each character different, have a
Mm-hmm.
different role.
Sure.
Um, when something that I learned early from mistakes was try to give everybody a different body type and physique so that the silhouettes of the characters can easily be picked up so you don't get mixed up with who did this and who did that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the character Douglas too, because he's a complex character in terms of if you go too far one way, he could become not likable. And then
Yeah.
if you go too far the other way, he then becomes the run of the mill character.
Yeah.
So it has to be kind of a balance there. And what I decided to do was there's a female character in there who,
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes what you can do, you can have two separate characters, but when they come together, they almost kind of form one character because
That
of
makes
their
sense.
dynamic and where they bring off of one another. So
Mm-hmm.
she's kind of almost like that
Yeah.
conscience, that question, that moral compass, but then he's also kind of guiding her to the realities of the world. So the book is kind of dark and is intended to be
Yeah.
dark because of the world is a very dark place. So that's
Yeah.
kind of so a lot of my stories, both of them you could kind of see that all they didn't end the way you would have thought it would have
No,
ended.
not at all.
Right. So
Not at
but
all. But it leaves you that taste in your mouth for more, though, for sure.
yeah, yeah. So
Definitely ready for issue twos of those.
yeah, so that's it. It's a kind of giving little pieces of the characters.
Yeah.
Don't don't not too much and not too
Yeah.
little. And
Yeah.
then sometimes you don't have I have five characters. Pick one or two or three
Mhm.
that you're gonna develop now.
Yeah.
Save the other two for another book. Give
Yeah.
everybody, it's like almost like the if you watch an episode of Scooby Doo, they kind of pair off and you get to see this body working with this person, that dynamic.
Yeah.
There's a reasoning behind that because if all five are together all the time, you're not gonna every voice
Yeah.
is hearing, not gonna see anybody standing.
That's
So
such a good point. Yeah.
yeah.
That's a really good point. Very good point.
So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I mean, Nigel, right? So we have the Critical Ops Task Force. We have the Kickstarter starting.
mhm.
Um, man, this is going to be really exciting. How far along are you within the story, right? So obviously we have issue one, which will have a Kickstarter for. The type of writer you
Mhm.
are, how far ahead do you try to stay on top of the story? Because that could be very difficult, especially in your situation where you have maybe two or three titles going on at the same time. How are you balancing off of that, all of that, right? Because I could see that being a little difficult sometimes too.
Yeah. So I talked to a lot of indie creators
Mm-hmm.
and I would talk to someone and you will hear them say, I am 15 books deep. I
Yeah.
am this thing.
That sounds
I don't
amazing to
believe,
me, to be honest. I don't think I could ever get to that, but go ahead though.
I
I
honestly,
think that's crazy. That's awesome, but that's just wow, impressive.
no, I, the way how I write is a little bit to do with mood,
Okay.
um, timing. Sometimes it does get me in trouble because an artist will pop up and say, I am free. And then I'm scrambling to finish a
Yeah.
script that I was sitting on. But I constantly, when I'm in a mood to write, I write.
Yeah.
And when I'm not, I don't force it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I tend to only be, I have a, I don't like to get in the habit of writing too many books
Yeah. Yeah.
because it can be daunting when you have five books sitting there finished and there's nowhere for you to fund them,
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
them done. So I
Mhm.
kind of live by the day, like I have maybe two scripts ahead of anything. So I've literally
Yeah.
just finished Critical Ops 2,
Okay.
sent it to the artist. The artist said he wants to see it. I said, well, here's a rough draft.
Yeah.
Tell me what you think so you could give me feedback because I like the artist to tell me his take because sometimes you don't want to make it too difficult or have them do something that they they can't draw or you know what I mean. So if a
Right.
guy can't draw horses, it's easier for me to take a horse with the shot
Mhm.
than to have a dumb looking horse.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't write ahead too much.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
tend to write one book ahead.
Yeah.
That way too, I could kind of polish it and fine tune it.
Yeah.
And I'm working on sequels to both of those books.
Oh, okay. Very good.
Right.
Yeah. So we'll get an issue two then. Now is
But
Diary.
the issue
I'm
two
sorry.
for Diary of Stray Dogs is actually in the Kickstarter.
Oh, it is. Well, let's make sure that we're mentioning that too. So I will look that up and I will make sure that I jump on that, my friend, because you left me in a bad spot on issue one, man. I got to find out what happens next.
Yeah.
So you have a
Um,
Kickstarter right now. That how far along is the Kickstarter on Diary of the Stray Dogs? Is it already open and ready to go?
no, it's written approval. It should be
Okay,
approved in the next couple of days.
okay,
Then we
perfect.
should be pushing to get some signups,
Yep,
and it will be launching September the 15th if everything
nice.
goes well.
September 15th on Diary of the Stray Dogs. And you'll have an opportunity to go back and purchase issue one, two in there as an add-on.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yes.
I have
So
that physical copy, my friend. I got to have the physical too.
yeah,
That's exciting, man.
Thanks,
That's
thanks.
exciting. Yeah. And then and when do you have a date yet for Critical Ops Task Force yet?
Well, it's in the same Kickstarter, so both
Oh,
of them.
okay.
So you'll be able to get all three of my books
Nice.
if you want physically.
Yeah.
The Diary of Stray Dogs 2 is 70 pages.
70?
Yeah, so 70 pages.
Wow, that's a big book, man.
Um,
That's a graphic
uh,
novel, Nigel.
yeah, Juan Carlos is back again.
Yeah.
You have a new
Nice.
colorist called Miriam Yessar from
Nice.
Egypt, and she did
Perfect.
a phenomenal job on it. Um, and it's really happy how everything kind of came out.
Yeah.
And that kind of got put into the Kickstarter because it was a book I had finished sitting
Yeah.
there, and it just made sense to add more value to the Kickstarter to
Yeah.
drop it in rather than sit on a 70-page graphic novel. So,
That's awesome.
we get to see more of Shani, we get to see her
Yeah.
crew, and she has a mercenary team, and
Yep.
hers is different from COTF. So
Yeah.
COTF is more of your Blackwater corporate for the man kind of corporation watchdogs,
Yeah.
while Chinese mercenaries are more grassroots,
Yeah.
duct tape, and spit kind of mercenaries.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and they're both in the same world, but they're set. The two stories are 10 years apart.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's so cool, man. Both of them are
Thanks, man.
amazing stories, and I'm super happy for you, Nigel. And I'm glad that you've had some success so far, man. And I know that the Kickstarter will fund. There's no doubt about it, man. No doubt about it.
Thank
We'll
you.
pump it as
Thank
much
you.
as we can, man, because it's good
Thank
stuff.
you.
I mean, anybody listening to this, I'm telling you, man, these two stories are top notch. And you will not be disappointed reading them, man. I had a blast reading them. It was fun. In fact, you get
Thank
to
you.
like the last few pages, you realize it's over, and you're like, oh man, that went fast. And that's a good. I think that's a good response to a comic book is when it felt like it went fast, right? You get lost in the story, you get lost in the characters, and then the artwork and the colors, and all of a sudden it's over, and you're like, all right, man, when's number two coming? You know, and that's the only downside about indie comics is we're all trying to fund everything that we're doing. So next month it's not going to be out, right? Whereas on
Yeah.
the big two, that's how it is. So, but man, it's worth the wait. It's going to be fun, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what else is going on with you, Nigel, right? We have these two projects. I assume that you have some other, not that you have to share anything, but I assume you
Mhm.
have some other things in the works. Will Diary of a Stray Dogs, will that be published under Wiseacre as well, or is that self-published and only Critical Ops being under Wiseacre?
Well, right now, only Critical Ops is under
Gotcha.
Wiseacre,
Yeah.
but um, there's nothing stopping after the Kickstarter. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I love working with Wiseacre,
Yeah.
um, being very helpful, very supportive.
Yeah.
Uh, because I am from where I am at my location, Barbados,
Yeah.
a lot of things that I can't do, a lot of stuff I can't access, even like the
Yeah.
same crowdfunding and that kind of stuff. So, as I said, the indie community is built on support.
Yeah.
People like you guys, if you share, you have a platform, you share stuff. There's some other people. So to try
Yeah.
to create this network to
Yeah.
help each other. So I'm very grateful for what Frederick and
Yeah.
Wiseacre did.
Yeah, yeah. No, they have I think they have a winning model and
Mhm.
they're already in diamond distribution, which means people could go to the local comic book stores and pick up most of their books. So my assumption is Critical Ops will be one of those books that I could go to my local comic book store in the future and say, "Hey,
You'll see that.
issue two
You'll
is
see
coming
that.
out on this month. Can you please order it for me?" And I mean, that's where you want to get as an indie creator, right? Is that your comic book is available for anyone to pick it up anywhere that they're at, and that's really hard to do as an independent, right? That's why you got to do a lot of comic cons and stuff like that. But if you could get in a Diamond or Lunar or any of those other distributors, that's game changer right there. And Wiseacre is so. Congratulations on that, man.
Thanks, Tom.
Congratulations on that. Yeah. So, what has the response been in Barbados with Diary of the Stray Dogs?
I have quite a fan base. A lot of
Yeah, I
people
bet
came
you do.
back. A lot of people, the way how because of being an indie creator
Yeah.
and being doing this for a while, I adopted a new model So some of you may have realized, or you may not, it will slip you if it was done well. Each story is a contained story. So although it leaves you wanting more, you don't
Yeah.
feel cheated
Yeah.
because you did have a full story.
Yeah.
So that's my model going forward.
Yeah.
Try to do a complete story. Follow almost like Mandalorian or how serials were done when I was growing up, where uh you could come in and watch any episode of Knight Rider. You didn't
Yeah.
have to watch last week's,
That's true. Yeah.
but it still kind of slowly progressed and you
Yeah.
still had progression, right?
Sure.
So that's what I'm planning. That's my plan.
Yeah.
So what was interesting was there was a lot of people who just jumped straight into book two because
Yeah.
book two was this meteor book. They just
Yeah.
jumped straight into book two. So the response has been great.
Yeah.
I've sent out the book to a few people to review, trying to get some buzz on, and then see if I can hear what feedback comes back. So
Yeah.
far from what you're telling me, it should be positive.
I think it's gonna be positive, my friend.
Yeah,
That's super exciting, Nigel, man. Congratulations.
thank you,
Now,
man.
do you have a local comic book store pretty close to where you live, or do you have to travel a little bit for that?
Yeah, we have a local comic book store here called Anime Spot. That's
Nice.
where I tend to sell my books.
Yeah.
So if you're ever in Barbados, just go to Anime Spot.
Nice.
Um, but because my island is small, not
Yeah.
because like you can get to, so there's not a competition for like many comic book shops. There's like
Yeah.
one or two kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then we also kind of either use online,
Yeah.
Amazon or stuff like that. So
Nice.
what I would tend to do, I tend to get trades. I just tend to wait for trades
Yeah.
because it's just easier because another thing that's different from the American culture with
Uh-huh.
the Caribbean culture and comic books, although we collected comics, we never took, we never saw them as a investment.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
I get a comic book from my gas station or whatever, read it. My cousin says he wants to read it. You
Yep.
give them. Somebody says like we could swap. You just swap. So you just swapping around these tatty comic books and they just put some tape on it or whatever. So it was just the way how it was for us. We
Yeah. Yeah.
collected. We never collect. There was only years later when we started to read things like Wizard and stuff. You said,
Yeah.
well, there's money in this, So, like,
Should have kept
so
that Spider-Man 221, right?
there's a lot of comic books that I had that were destroyed and the cover
Yeah.
was swept through the door that is valuable today.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I know. It's heartbreaking on one side, but on another side, I think one of the downfalls of comic books is I think that desire for investment has come in and it's kind of robbed people of the actual story that's taking place within the comic book. So although I do collect quite a few comics, I'll be honest, I don't collect very many Marvel and DC. I mean, I love DC. DC is my favorite universe. I could tell that you grew up with Marvel, so Marvel is probably your favorite universe, right? I just grew up with Justice League and all that stuff, so I love it. But I have everything. I love Marvel too. Don't get me wrong. But I really, over the last 10 years, some of the stories have not been that great for me, and they're kind of getting away from what made those two companies so great. And I found that in indie comics. So if you were to go through my collection, probably 60% are just small independent comic creators. And there's more passion for me in that too. Because one, like you said, the community is there. It's really hard to have that community with DC and Marvel, right? I mean, those people are trying to get into Hollywood and write for movies, and more power to them. I mean, that's not a negative. It's a different feel and a different world. Whereas the indie, there's more of a passion for true comic books and putting out amazing stories. And like you said, there's also this desire to help one another out because the strength of that community is how we could all be successful. I don't know too many independent creators that have gotten rich off of creating comic books. It's mainly a passion project where you have a passion for a story and you want to get it out. And indie comics is that platform that's allowing you to tell that story. So I love the simplicity and the purity of that. And I hope it stays to a certain extent that way because I love that aspect of it. And I get to meet people like you and Frederick and Tyler at Godhood Comics and so on and so forth. if it was the other way around, I would have never met any of you. And I'd just be in a comic book store buying it, reading it, putting in a nice sheet, and then hoping I get rich off of it one day, which there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not shooting shots at anybody. If that's what you do, that's your thing, no problem. But I love the simplicity of just being lost in a story for 15 or 20 minutes.
There's nothing like back in the indie Kickstarter.
Yes.
Getting the book.
Yeah.
And then being able to reach out to the creator and said, I love this book, or could you explain to me what happened on page such and such?
Yeah, yeah.
Get this course going. You know what I mean? That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
You can't do that with everything. You know, that's the beauty of it.
That's the beauty of it. And I'll be honest with you, I go to a few cons and I get to meet. I usually spend most of my time in the creator section where you have those small independents, and I get to interview them and speak with them, and then I invite them to the podcast, and you just meet some amazing people with incredible backgrounds. And who would have thought there would be this creator in Barbados putting out such amazing stories? I would have never known, my friend, unless you reached out to me. And then Frederick reached out and he goes, "Hey, have you talked to Nigel?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm already talking to him." He goes, "Oh, okay, cool." So yeah, it's amazing, man. It wouldn't happen any other way. Yeah. Well, Nigel, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on. September 15th, you could count on me to be that voice for you, to let everyone know it's ready and that they need to get in there. They will not be disappointed. My recommendation, I put my name on it. Get out there and get these comics, man. But I'm super happy for you. Congratulations on your success. And I hope that you have an amazing Kickstarter. And I can't wait to get into some of these other issues that you're already working on, my friend.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Yeah. Nigel, have a fantastic week. If you need anything, my friend, please reach out, and we got you.
Okay, man. Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Nigel, have a great week.
Okay, thank you.
Talk soon.